Good evening. It's a killing that has all the hallmarks of a brutal gangland hit. But according to police, the victim is far from an underworld figure.
4:02 p.m., Hertfordshire Street, Elizabeth Hills. A 24-year-old man slumps beside his car. Engine still running. Phone screen glowing with a half-typed message he'll never send. The air reeks of burnt rubber and gasoline. A bullet hole through the driver's side glass. Blood pooling on clean suburban asphalt. 10 minutes away, two vehicles erupt in flames, almost simultaneously. One in Green Valley, another in Bonnyrigg Heights. This wasn't random violence. This was a murder directed from inside a maximum security prison. And the man who gave the order? He couldn't even leave his cell. It took 865 days to solve, 11 arrests, hundreds of warrants, a trail that led through encrypted phones, burnt-out cars, and coded messages that crossed state lines. One question haunted detectives from day one. How do you execute the perfect murder when you're locked behind bars? If you're into cases where the truth is stranger than fiction, hit subscribe, because you'll want to see how this ends. His name was Marvin Oraiha, 24 years old, living in Elizabeth Hills, one of those Sydney suburbs where the biggest drama is usually someone's lawn getting too long, a place of driveways, trimmed hedges, and silence after school hours. To his neighbors, polite, quiet, family guy, the kind of person who'd wave when you passed, maybe help carry groceries if he saw you struggling. To police, someone who orbited dangerous circles, not a patched comanchero member, not a soldier, just close enough to catch their shadow. Loosely linked, they'd say, a name that brushed against the kind of people who settle disputes with bullets, not lawyers. That distance should have kept him safe. It didn't. That morning started ordinary. Marvin left home with his girlfriend, headed into the city, just another Tuesday. Westfield Pitt Street Mall, shopping, coffee. The kind of mundane routine that makes up most of our lives. Cameras inside the mall caught them walking together through the crowd, relaxed, unaware, blending in with hundreds of other shoppers. But rewind that CCTV footage. Look closer. Two men. No shopping bags, no smiles. Eyes locked on Marvin. They weren't shopping. They were hunting. Every time Marvin stopped, they stopped. Every turn he made, they mirrored, staying just far enough back to avoid suspicion, close enough to never lose sight. And every few minutes, they'd glance down at their phones, short taps, quick nods, checking in with someone. Someone was feeding them updates. Someone was coordinating every move, adjusting the plan in real time. Did Marvin feel it? That crawling sensation when you're being watched? That pressure on the back of your neck when someone's gaze lingers too long? Or had he learned to live with it? That low hum of danger that comes when you're too close to power you don't control? Later, detectives would freeze those frames and play them again and again. The way those men looked down at their phones, the short taps, the timing between each move, every gesture rehearsed, every second deliberate. Here's where it gets calculated. 1:10 p.m. Two men are already in motion, texting updates, coordinating routes, staying just out of sight. Every message they send is another tick in a countdown Marvin Oraiha doesn't know is running. 3 p.m. A black Mercedes pulls into Edensor Park, a quiet area just 10 minutes from Marvin's home. There, it meets a dark Toyota Kluger. No words recorded, no faces shown. But police allege that during those few seconds, a bag changed hands. A small, inconspicuous transfer that investigators now believe contained the murder weapon. 3:35 p.m. Same Mercedes meets a white Audi on Eber Avenue. Traffic cameras catch them briefly, side by side. Then the Audi peels off in the direction of Hertfordshire Street, Marvin Street. The Mercedes turns the other way, splitting the trail. Every vehicle had a role. Every driver knew their exit. Every step clean. Every route pre-tested. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was choreography. 4 p.m., a calm suburban street. Kids probably getting home from school. Someone's watering their lawn. The sound of a lawnmower in the distance. Marvin pulls into his driveway. His girlfriend's car passes moments before. She doesn't see what's coming, doesn't hear the engine idling 2 houses down. 4 gunshots crack the suburban silence, sharp, precise, over in seconds. Neighbors would later say it sounded like fireworks. That moment of confusion before the brain catches up and realizes something's wrong. By the time they looked outside, Marvin Oraiha was dead. He never made it to his front door, never sent that last text. Just 24 years old, lying beside his car in a neighborhood where nothing ever happens. Within minutes, chaos erupts across Sydney's southwest. Green Valley, a car bursts into flames. Bonnyrigg Heights. Another vehicle ignites, almost the exact same moment. 2 stolen cars, doused in accelerant, torched to erase every trace, every fingerprint, every fiber, every molecule of DNA that could lead back to a name. No fingerprints, no blood. Number plates had been swapped twice in one day. One detective, speaking off the record, called it clockwork murder. Everything was timed, from the first text at 1:10 to the handoff at 3 to the last spark of fire after 4:05. 55 minutes of precision planning executed without a single misstep. Forensics teams would later confirm both getaway cars were stolen weeks earlier, hidden, waiting. Even the fuel used to burn them was bought in cash at 3 different stations to avoid patterns. The killers didn't just escape. They dissolved into the sprawl of Sydney traffic, into the pulse of a city that forgets faces faster than it records them. But here's the thing about precision. It leaves patterns, and patterns eventually lead to names. Police formed a task force within hours. Strike Force Hackenberg, named with the kind of bureaucratic randomness that belies the intensity of the work ahead. But this wasn't just homicide detectives sitting around a whiteboard. This was an entire network mobilized. Raptor Squad, Task Force Magnus, forensics, ballistics, data analysts, phone intercept teams, financial investigators. They spread across Sydney's southwest like a net tightening. Green Valley, Edensor Park, Yagoona, Roselands, Guildford, Liverpool, Marylands. Every address, another fragment of a map. Every seized phone, another whisper of who planned what. Every bank transfer, another thread in a web that stretched further than anyone initially thought. Forensic teams combed through the wreckage of 2 burnt-out cars. From melted metal, they pulled fragments of DNA, traces of fuel, half-destroyed phone chips. From those ashes came the first leads. Detectives began reconstructing the network. 7 roles in total: watchers, drivers, shooters, financiers, and 1 coordinator, a machine that needed every piece working in perfect order. July 2023, 2 months after the murder. A 22-year-old from Edensor Park is arrested, charged with murder, car theft, and participation in a criminal group. At dawn, police execute simultaneous raids across half a dozen suburbs. What they find looks like the anatomy of a modern hit. Ammunition, gel blasters, tasers, burner phones still wrapped in plastic, cloned number plates, stacks of cash rubber-banded in denominations, designer clothes, drugs, fragments of a criminal economy built on precision and fear. CCTV footage soon surfaces. Men in hooded jumpers, dark cars circling the streets near Marvin's home. A black Toyota Kluger, a white Audi, silent, controlled. One passing through just minutes before the shots. Detectives release the images to the public, asking for information, anything, but no one steps forward. Not one name, not one call. The silence is deafening. Then comes the ballistics report. The gun used to kill Marvin? It had been used before, in another underworld shooting months earlier. Same weapon, same precision. This wasn't a one-off. Marvin's murder was part of a sequence, a pattern stretching across Sydney's gangland. A gun making the rounds, bodies piling up. For months, Strikeforce Hackenberg works in darkness, connecting dots that don't want to be connected. Hours of CCTV, thousands of intercepted messages, encrypted phones cracked open by specialists, bank transfers traced to offshore accounts, financial webs spanning 3 countries. Piece by piece, the map of the hit comes into focus. But even with arrests, forensics, phone intercepts, and surveillance, one question haunts the task force. Who coordinated it all? Because the more they dig, the more they realize. Witnesses are vanishing, phones going dead, cars getting dumped. People who should be talking suddenly develop amnesia. Someone has control over an entire network, watchers, drivers, shooters, and not one person slips up. Not one breaks under interrogation. Not one tries to cut a deal. Who has that kind of power? That kind of fear sewn into every layer? The answer was inside Silverwater Correctional Center. Here's what makes this case different from every other gang murder you've heard about. By mid-2025, 9 people had been charged in connection with Marvin's death. 9 pieces of the puzzle locked up. But detectives knew something was missing. Someone was missing. Then came the 10th arrest, a man already behind bars, already serving time on unrelated charges, already under 24-hour surveillance, already cut off from the outside world, or so everyone thought. Police allege he didn't just know about the murder, he directed it, orchestrated it, approved every decision. From a concrete cell the size of a small bathroom, he allegedly recruited the watchers, financed the vehicles, coordinated the timing, and gave the final green light for the hit. Every decision filtered through phones, intermediaries, coded accounts, instructions wrapped in language designed to sound innocent. Money moved through channels designed to look legitimate. He didn't need to walk the streets. He still ruled them. So how do you coordinate a murder from prison? How do you command loyalty from behind bars? How do you ensure no one talks when the walls are supposed to keep you silent? Stick around, because the answer is as terrifying as it is brilliant. October 1st, 2025, 9:15 a.m. exactly. Strike Force Hackenberg moves in. This time the target isn't on the street. He's already locked up. 29-year-old Tuifua Vailena Koloamatangi. Already serving time on unrelated charges, now charged with murder and knowingly directing the activities of a criminal group. For months, detectives had been following digital ghosts, encrypted messages, GPS trails that looped through the underbelly of Sydney and led to one unlikely place, Silverwater Correctional Center. Court documents later reveal the full picture, a network of instructions, coded payments, encrypted messages that link back to him. Koloamatangi allegedly used lieutenants as his eyes and ears, people on the outside who reported back, carried out orders, moved money, arranged logistics. Messages recovered from seized phones show the plan was assembled piece by piece. Location scouting, vehicle sourcing, weapon procurement, driver coordination, escape routes, cleanup protocol. Every link in the chain obeyed commands that came from a prison phone, the kind of phone that's supposed to be monitored, supposed to be restricted, supposed to keep inmates from running criminal operations. Think about that for a second. A man locked behind steel and concrete. No freedom, no mobility, under constant surveillance. Guards watching every movement. Cameras recording every interaction. And still, he allegedly commanded violence beyond the walls. Distance didn't weaken his control. In the right hands, it perfected it. Because when you're untouchable, when you can't be seen on the street, when you're not the one pulling the trigger, proving your involvement becomes exponentially harder. At Burwood Local Court, bail is refused. Of course it is. Koloamatangi remains in custody, now facing life imprisonment if convicted on these new charges. But his arrest reveals something far more disturbing than one man's guilt. If the walls can't stop the flow of orders, what else can't they stop? If a prisoner can orchestrate a daylight execution with military precision, what does that say about the system designed to contain him? Marvin's death wasn't isolated. It wasn't personal, it was tactical. Between 2020 and 2023, over 20 murders rocked Sydney, all tied to an ongoing war between the Comanchero Motorcycle Club and the Alameddine criminal network. Tit for tat, strike and counterstrike, bodies dropping in parking lots, gyms, cafes, driveways. June 27, 2023, just 1 month after Marvin dies. Alan Mahiran, a senior Comanchero figure, is gunned down in Bondi Junction. Daylight, public, brazen. The message was clear. No one is immune, not soldiers, not leaders, not associates on the fringe. Law enforcement responds with overwhelming force. Task Force Magnus, a multi-agency strike against gangland violence, hundreds of officers, wiretaps, raids, constant surveillance. The goal, choke the flow of violence before it drowns the city. Then, in 2024, Operation Morpheus strikes, a cross-border crackdown spanning Australia and New Zealand, targeting Comanchero arms, money laundering networks, and criminal corridors. 33 arrests, Millions in assets seized, weapons confiscated, cells of influence smashed across 2 countries. Federal intelligence reveals the true scope. Firearms shipped through Turkey, money funneled via Vancouver, operatives moving through Auckland, safe houses in 3 countries. The Comanchero's reach wasn't local. It was transnational, a criminal enterprise operating like a corporation. This wasn't just a feud between rival gangs fighting over territory. It was a business model built on violence. Every killing became currency. Every target, a statement. Every bullet, an investment. Every murder, a message to competitors, to traitors, to anyone thinking about stepping out of line. Marvin's name entered that ledger. The price of conflict. 1 bullet in a long tally. 1 life exchanged in an economy of fear. In the end, 11 people were charged in connection with Marvin Oraiha's murder. 11 names, 11 roles, each one assigned a specific task. Watchers who tracked his movements, drivers who ferried weapons and coordinated routes, shooters who pulled the trigger, enforcers who ensured silence, financiers who funded the operation, and the organizer who approved it all. Together, they formed the architecture of one daylight execution that changed the shape of Sydney's underworld. For police, the arrests were proof of something rare. Patience rewarded. 2 years of investigation, over 100 warrants executed, hundreds of hours of surveillance footage analyzed frame by frame, cooperation between local, state, and federal agencies. For Strikeforce Hackenberg, this was closure, at least on paper. But justice in this world is never clean. The network still breathes. The hierarchy merely reshuffles. New soldiers step up, new orders flow down, old debts wait to be settled. As one detective said, off the record, it isn't closure, it's containment. For Marvin's family, the legal victories bring little peace. They speak of him softly, not in the language of gangs or retaliation, just grief that lingers long after headlines fade. For them, there's no satisfaction in the word justice, just absence, just the empty chair at the dinner table, just the silence where his laugh used to be. The driveway where Marvin fell is quiet again, clean, suburban, ordinary. Someone else probably lives there now, kids playing in the yard, life moving on the way it always does. But the fear doesn't disappear, it just waits for the next signal. Sydney's underworld shifts, new alliances form, new rivalries ignite. Old debts wait patiently in the dark. Task Force Magnus and Operation Morpheus continue their work, monitoring, intercepting, disrupting. Because in this world, endings are temporary. Every arrest buys only time. Every conviction just reshuffles the deck. For police, it's a victory. For Sydney, it's a warning. Because every time one mastermind is caught, another begins the countdown. If this case proves anything, it's that power doesn't need freedom. It just needs reach. It just needs fear. It just needs people willing to follow orders no matter where those orders come from. What do you think? Can prison walls really stop someone determined enough to control the streets? Or are we just pretending they can? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you made it this far, you know what to do. Subscribe. Hit the bell. There are more cases like this coming. Cases where the truth is darker than any fiction. See you in the next one.